Hi everyone, welcome to this book tour, ASMR style the best I can. I'm a little new to doing ASMR, so feedback is welcome, but not like unnecessary gross hate, please. I thought I would start with a book tour because I like books a lot, and this is the collection that my boyfriend and I have. This is just one of our many bookcases. I actually have more books in this part of our room. There's more books in our bedroom and laying around the house. And I have actually a collection of books back at my parents' house. But when we moved into this house, this little nook library shelf was our very first thing that we filled and kind of unpacked into, because it's just really cute. And it's so kind of charming, it takes you back a little bit. So there might be some noise here because as I open it, this little guy may make some noise, but that is from China. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but it was passed down in my family. So he's cute. Alright. So in this tour, I will be glossing over some books because they are Mike's books that I have not read, and I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about them. I do have books here too that I have not read yet. I am very much one of those people who buys books and plans to read them and lets them sit forever until I get to them. But I do tend to get around to them, so it's not like a ridiculous impulse buy. So let's go bottom to top. So this is one that I have not read yet, but it is a classic as far as I've heard, and thus I was directed towards the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and the first book is The Way of Kings. Definitely for the fantasy folks out there, epic fantasy genre. This book I actually never returned to the person who lent it to me, but she was a sweetheart. And this is actually a really interesting story about a woman who has schizophrenia and her experience in the hospital, and recovering as a person with schizophrenia and learning how to live with schizophrenia. Pretty dark stuff, but I am a therapist, so I work with people with schizophrenia and find that fascinating instead of frightening. And I love to help those people. I have some clients who have schizophrenia who lead completely normal lives. This is a book that I have not read yet, but it was recommended by an Instagram person that I follow, and she said that it's great, and I love books about wolves and the American West. One day I will live out there. I am an East Coaster. But for now, jumping away from the family is not an option. Consider the Lobster. This is by the classic David Foster Wallace, who's a pretty famous author, who did, unfortunately, commit suicide, so we lost him. But this, I actually haven't read all of this, but one of the stories that I was reading is about him venturing into the pornography world and his experience in that, and it's fascinating. I started this book and have not finished it, but this was a gift from my mom. This is about a horse who was considered the smartest horse, and he did tricks and things. And it's pretty interesting so far, especially about his connection to the guy who cared for him. But I definitely need to get to reading that. Another one I haven't read yet. This is really just going to make me look bad, all these books I haven't read yet, but The Sight. Another wolf book. Wolf series. Okay, one that I have read. So many of you may have seen the series Lock and Key on Netflix, and there's actually a graphic novel, sort of comic book version of that, that is the origin. It's actually by Joe Hill, illustrated by Gabriel Rodriguez. Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, so it's pretty cool. I really like this series because it combines some sort of like magical fantasy and sort of murder horror. So it's a really cool combining of those two things, and I do like the series on TV. But this is a great book. I have the second one. I haven't read it yet. This is a special book. Cheryl Strayed is one of my favorite people that I follow for inspiration in life, and Wild was a book that I was reading when I traveled and camped for 6 days in the wilderness in Colorado. And little did I know that this book would come to mean a lot to me, because at that point I had lost my mom, and the story does take place around her grief to a large extent, but also she hikes the Pacific Crest Trail by herself. Pretty marvelous to me. I mean, I don't think I could do it without at least a dog, and she did it all by herself. So it's pretty incredible. This one I have not read, and I really need to. When Elephants Weep, The Emotional Lives of Animals. I am an animal lover, if you couldn't tell already. I began my educational journey wanting to be a zoologist like Jane Goodall, but she got to do it in a time when they didn't require you to like do chemistry and math hardcore. So that was hard for me as someone who's much more of an English person and language studier. Siddhartha is a classic. I definitely want to reread this one. I think it's one that you do need to read multiple times and kind of take in, but it is the story of Siddhartha's coming to his enlightenment. And just this, when he speaks about sitting by a river and he just kind of like, you hear him reaching the point, it's pretty incredible. Haven't read this one yet. I'm a little afraid to read Ernest Hemingway because I know that he gets kind of down in the dumps. And I just haven't been in the mood to read something sad, or that has a sad ending, or about war. I mean, the world's just a little too screwed up right now. The Overstory is one that I have not read yet, but my uncle recommended to me. So I do take his recommendations pretty highly, so I recommend it. It's by Richard Powers, and it is a Pulitzer Prize winner. So, if you don't listen to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you're missing out. Even if you're not Buddhist, he just has so much wisdom to speak to. And he's just a fun dude. I don't know how you get to be how he is without being a form of enlightened. This is 2 books that are part of a series. It's sort of a Fantastical Wolf series. And I actually only partway through this one, but yes, I am someone who puts down books and puts them back up. But I recommend it already because this one was about the start of the story, and I love it. This is a sad book. I haven't read the whole thing, but it's about stories of people who have had loss of their mother, especially young. And it has been pretty helpful for me to have, just knowing like other people's experience. King of the Wind is my favorite childhood book. I read it so many times growing up, and I'm a horse lover and rider, so it's always been inspiring to me and made me want a horse, very much like this horse. And the artistry on the cover is beautiful. The Godolphin Arabian is a real thing. They're considered the origin of racehorses. Becoming a Tiger is a book on animal behaviorism, and I love to study animals and understand how they operate, so this is a great one if you want to just learn more about understanding how to speak animal. And this is just a little essay book that I have here. There is a manga here I have not read yet, Blade of the Immortal. I look forward to reading it. I do think there's a series now, an anime, but it's not dubbed yet, and so my boyfriend and I have not tackled it yet. And Lead with Your Heart. is by a doctor, actually, and about how he kind of achieves Zen life for himself with horses and his case for horses and healing. I'm gonna skip by some books here other than just naming them because they are Mike's and I have not read them and I'm out of breath. War and Peace, classic. Have not tackled this in book form. As you may have heard, it's very long, but Mike is perseverant. The Telltale Heart is a classic that I have read. Ernest Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls, on my list. Haven't read it. As I said before, a little afraid of sadness. This is actually a book by a friend of Mike's. It's a family that he grew up with, the Ingalls, so as you see it, try it out. This is one that I picked up in a bookstore, like a random bookstore. You know, third hand, I love that kind of store, and it's the early adventures of Jack London, so pretty cool. I love Jack London's experience of Alaska. These books are Mike's. This series by Patrick Rothfuss, wow, is pretty famous from what I've heard. The Name of the Wind I've definitely seen around. I have not gotten to it. Poetry. I am a Whitman fan. I like Frost, but I like Whitman more. The Path of Daggers is a Mike book by Robert Jordan. The Princess of Ireland from the Dublin Saga is a Mike book. Here's a classic. This is one of mine, The Little Prince. And if you have not read The Little Prince, you should. There's so much wisdom in this story, and it's for little kids. And this Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, I will say it wrong, I'm sure, was ahead of his time. And I actually read this a long time ago when I was a kid, and then I bought a version, so this is a newer version when I got older, but it's a historical story. Like, it will go down as one of the most important children's books, I believe. I haven't fully read this one, but it is about achieving happiness and, Zen. If Deepak Chopra recommends it, it's pretty good. So it's by Michael A. Singer, The Untethered Soul. And of course, my uncle read this and then bought it for me because there was a horse on it. Lord of the Rings, of course, is classic, and I recommend to anyone. I actually at my dad's house have the leather-bound version of the trilogy, which is pretty cool. This book is very interesting. It's more for people who are interested in psychology, social work, the social sciences, and the psychological sciences. And it's a psychiatrist discussing different cases that he encountered in his work. Very informative for those of you trying to become therapists or psychiatrists. Very interesting. Mindfulness. I'm a big fan of mindfulness. I recommend it to everyone. And I think someone just bought me this book. This one was one from my mom, and I'm a huge fan of the research by Oliver Sacks about your brain and music, and this is another book tackling that topic. I think music is kind of like some sort of weird magic for our brains. Demian by Herman Hesse is one that I read in high school and actually liked. I didn't always love all of our high school books. The Scarlet Pimpernel was one that I did love in high school, and I need to get a copy of that. But Demian is... I don't know how to explain Demian. You'll just have to read it. It's not even that long. But it's written from a long time ago, so be ready. This is a book passed down from my grandmother to my mother, and then she passed it to me, so I have some poems marked in there. And it's just sweet little poems for mothers and daughters. That makes a kind of cool sound. I don't know if you can hear it. This is one that I bought at a used bookstore. the love poetry of Shakespeare, and let me tell you, that guy definitely knocked some panties off, or woman, whoever they were, knocked some panties off. The Tao of Pooh, one of my favorite books and guiding books by Benjamin Hoff. I am somewhat of someone who follows more of Taoism and Buddhism in my thought processes. I'm not really a religious person, but this is kind of a spiritual way of being, and yet again, so much wisdom through a children's story, a children's character, and the sequel is The Day of Piglet. I actually have not read 1984 by George Orwell. I have it, it's on the list, it's a classic. Fairy Wars, Mike book, bet you it's good, he has good taste. The Chronicle of Narnia is of course a classic. Chronicles, I should say. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, of course, being one of the most famous ones. The Harry Potter series. If you have not read Harry Potter, I don't understand why. No, I'm just kidding. To each their own, but unless you don't like fantasy, otherwise you should really give Harry Potter a try. My favorite is The Prisoner of Azkaban. I think Hermione just becomes so badass in it, and the Buckbeak, the creatures that happen to be in it, and Sirius appears. There's just so much really great about the third book in the series. And of course Harry Potter is, so this is a series I'll be reading to my kids when I get older. I do really appreciate Native American culture and wisdom, so these two books are books that I picked up on my travels with my family growing up out west. And they are about just Native American culture and legends and stories and beliefs. And I do believe that we need to pay more attention to the history of the Native American people in our country. Another Mike book. This one is about a woman who works as a rancher. But she really ranches. She stays out on the terrain with the cattle by herself in a wagon. So it's back in the day a little bit. And just her life journey a little bit. And it's pretty cool. A friend of mine gave it to me just saying that she knew I would like it because it's horses and the West. And strong women. Inkspell's a Mike book, although I've always wanted to read it, so I will pull it off the shelf for sure. The Wheel of Time series, I need to tackle still, but it is one of the classic fantasy series. This is Mike's collection, but he definitely has pushed me to get on top of it. I'm a little busy reading The Rise of Kyoshi, which is a part of the Avatar series. The Last Airbender, not the Blue People. And last but not least is this random shelf of books. Calvin and Hobbes comics, which Mike's dad gave to him, and Calvin and Hobbes is a great classic for gaining so much love from the little things day to day. This horses book was a gift from my mom, and it's beautiful photography that's edited of horses with color infused into it, and it's amazing. And I saw it when we were in a old bookstore in New York, and then for Christmas later that year she surprised me with it. The Beatles. Mike and I are Beatles people. Don't hate, we are the Beatles people. So of course we have a Beatles book. Mike just finished another degree, so these are some of his school books here. And actually I am a therapist, so these are some of my books from my master's degree. Inside Out is a great book for just learning about how people operate. And last but not least is this book that is a photographic collection about my mom. Two family members, Jeff and Celestine, made this for us. And she did live a pretty life well, so it's pretty cool. And that's all the books on this shelf. So if you turned into this, thank you. I'm gonna wrap us up by closing the doors here. And if you have any feedback. I am new to this, but I've been told I have a soothing voice and can make the tapping sounds well, and plan to try and do this a little better. So let me know your thoughts.